Hey everyone, welcome into the FantasyPros Football Podcast. I'm Bobby Sylvester, joined as always by Mike Tagliere, and we've got our Week 3 DFS show today, and we're joined by Davis Mattek of Roto Experts. He also does the Takecast. He's on Twitter at his name, Davis Mattek. I'm at Bobby Fantasy Pro, and Mike is at Mike Tagliere NFL. Davis, how's it going?
You know, it's going pretty great. Excited to talk about another great week in the National Football League.
You know what? I owe you an apology. I actually just thought of this. I wasn't planning on talking about it. You came on in the preseason and did a mock draft with us, and you took Chris Godwin in the 4th round. And Tags and I were like, what in the world is going on here? And we kind of laughed a little bit. And he ended up going in like the early 4th round for his ADP. You were way ahead of the curve on that one, man.
Looks like he, at least for a couple weeks, it looks like he is the new wide receiver 1 of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Seems like Mike Evans he looks like he's a little bit more of a decoy these days.
Tags, what's going on, buddy?
Oh, nothing. As you know, I got a year older on Monday, and I had like an old man moment yesterday. So I held the door open for someone, like when you're well ahead of them, and then you see someone coming, you're like, I could let the door close, but I'll stand here and hold it. And then like they just walked through and they didn't say anything to me, and I was just like, and I don't know if that's like me getting older and being like, I feel like you should say thank you when someone holds the door open for you. Am I wrong on that?
That's why I always just go to the automatic door, because I don't want to have to deal with interacting with people, ever.
Davis, am I wrong? Is this like an old man thing? Should I just like get over it?
No, I mean, that's like, you know what that is, Tex? That's like a very Midwestern thing, is like people from the Midwest just very much expect that to be a favor to be returned. And, people from the Eastern and Western coast, like it's not the same. So very possible that person, they could have just been a traveler.
It's entirely possible. Or they're from Chicago, and Chicago's just, not quite as good as St. Louis, Texas.
I disagree wholeheartedly.
I'm just messing with you. Okay, guys, we're going to get into DFS, and we're going to spend most of the day talking about cash game running backs and wide receiver for Fanduel and Draftkings. Now, of course, we're going to talk about quarterbacks, tight ends, DST, GPP, but that's going to be towards the end of the show. Before we get into that, I wanted to tell you a little bit about our DFS optimizer. Every week when I'm building my lineups on Fanduel and Draftkings, I'm always going to the lineup optimizer because you can lock in the plays that you're absolutely certain about, exclude players that you don't want to use, and it's going to help you figure out how to fill in the blanks for the rest of your lineup. It's really easy to use. There's all kinds of cool bells and whistles like stacks. You can do a multi-lineup generator. You can make your own player pool, all kinds of stuff like that. I love the lineup optimizer. And you guys can check it out at fantasypros.com/optimizer. It's only available for Hall of Fame subscribers, though. All right, guys, not much in the way of news to talk about, so let's just start at the running back position. Davis, is there one star that you would be happy to spend up on this week?
Yeah, I think I very slightly prefer Christian McCaffrey over Ezekiel Elliott. I have them within half a point in my like semi-customized projections on dailyroto.com, and basically the only reason I have them that way is that I think McCaffrey is just a little bit more likely to play the whole game, whereas I think there's a pretty good chance that Ezekiel Elliott at some point is sitting on the bench for the Dallas Cowboys just because they're up so many points.
Our model is screaming Christian McCaffrey as well. It likes Ezekiel Elliott. You could use both of them if you can find a way to squeeze them into your lineup. But our ownership projections have Christian McCaffrey 30 percentage points lower than Ezekiel Elliott just because of recency bias. What would you tell the people who are hesitant to play Christian McCaffrey after what happened last Thursday night?
Just these things happen. You really would just be best off just not even paying attention to stuff like that. It just, it's just one very small data point compared to the other 30 data points we have of Christian McCaffrey playing every single snap, getting all these targets, and just being, one of the absolute best players in fantasy.
You're right. He's averaging 28 fantasy points per game over the last 11, even factoring in last week. Tags, which way are you leaning between Zeke and McCaffrey? Or do you think somebody else belongs in this conversation? Dalvin Cook against Oakland, Saquon against Tampa?
I like them both, but considering that Zeke's just 200 more, I'll go with Zeke in this one. Just it's more of a fair, like you don't have any concern about the fact that he's going to produce. It's just a matter of how long is he going to produce for. As Davis said, it's possible that he gets pulled in like the middle of the third quarter. And by that time, the damage will have been done. I mean, people had the same exact concerns about Mark Ingram in week 1, saying that the game shouldn't have been too competitive. And it's like he might split carries more than usual. He still scored 2 touchdowns in that game. So they eased in Zeke in week 1. He got more carries in week 2. I just have zero concerns about him. He's like the lock of the week for me. Like you play Ezekiel Elliott no matter what. McCaffrey's a good play, and as Davis said, I think this is like a week where you might be able to try and squeeze both of them in a lineup, but McCaffrey's going to be under-owned because of what happened last week. So we don't know who the starting quarterback is. It seems like it's going to be Kyle Allen, but we don't know for certain. But when Allen came in against the Falcons in week 16 last year, McCaffrey ended that game with 13 targets. I don't know how many came from him. I haven't gone back to watch that game yet, and then in week 17, he didn't play at all. He had like 4 carries. He played like the first quarter. The concerns are enough with McCaffrey to lower, but I don't think McCaffrey's a bad play at all. He's definitely on my cash game list. If you want to play him, I have no issue with it, but I will play Zeke because I have like legitimately zero concerns. Like he's not going to play all 4 quarters, but he is going to do damage when he's on the field.
Yeah, he's definitely going to do damage. The thing is, I can't figure out. The last couple weeks, we've had some really cheap options that it made a lot of sense to plug them into your lineups. Matt Breida last week was a great case. Josh Jacobs, I faded him. A lot of people played Josh Jacobs, but there's really nobody like that this week. You could go down to 5,900 with Chris Carson. Horrible matchup against the New Orleans Saints and their great run defense, but he is using the passing game. You could go down to, I'm talking about DraftKings prices right now. Aaron Jones is at 6,100. Miles Sanders is at 3,900, but again, he's splitting the backfield. He's going up against Detroit this week. Those are the best value plays in our system. I don't love them. So I can't really see a scenario where I'm not playing both Zeke and McCaffrey. Or do you have a cheaper play that you like, Davis, or a mid-range play even?
Well, Dalvin Cook would be kind of my preferred pivot, and then Austin Eckler. And I think right there, we've talked about the 4 running backs who are in play for cash on DraftKings. It might be a little bit wider on FanDuel, but if you are playing someone that's not Dalvin Cook, Austin Eckler, Ezekiel Elliott, or Christian McCaffrey in your cash game lineups on DraftKings, I think that you have probably used a little bit too much artistic license with your projections.
I would agree with that. That's a really good way to put it. Is you're just getting too cute, right? Tex, what do you think about Austin Eckler this week? Because I think he belongs in the conversation, but he's not really close to a cash game play for me just because this Houston run defense has been very good the last few years.
They have been good, but losing Jadeveon Clowney has made them take a step back. They've allowed 5.5 yards per carry over the first 2 games. Now, granted, they played against Alvin Kamara and Leonard Fournette, 2 running backs, better running backs in the NFL. But my only concern with Eckler, and it's not like a big enough concern where I'm going to say he's not playable, is that he fumbled in the preseason on the goal line, and then he fumbled last week, and that was one of the many miscues in that game that led to the loss for the Chargers. So is it possible that Justin Jackson starts getting more work on the goal line? I think so. We still know that Eckler's the preferred option in the passing game, so he's going to get some work there. I like Eckler. I'm not going to play him in cash just because I'd rather pay up, if you wanted to go up to Cook or go up to McCaffrey or whatever the case may be. But I do think it's important we do talk about a couple of the cheaper options just in case someone's like, I don't feel comfortable playing Nelson Aguilar in cash. I don't want to do it. And if they want to spend up at wide receiver, who are some of the options that they can go to? There's just really 2 names that kind of come up. I mean, Frank Gore at 4,400. I know he's not sexy. He's not appealing, but that's what cash games are, right? You don't have to be sexy. You just need a floor. And you're essentially looking for 11 PPR points out of Frank Gore against the Bengals who can't tackle. I have no issue with playing Frank Gore at 4,400, even on DraftKings.
With Singletary out, by the way. I need to mention that.
Yeah, Singletary's not going to play. And then the only other one I would consider, but it's really tough, is Miles Sanders. He's 3,900, but this is one of those things where it might be getting too cute, as Davis mentioned, is that they are big favorites at home. They don't have their receiving options. Alshon Jeffrey's going to be out. Deshaun Jackson's going to be out. So they should lean more on the run game, but
it's Detroit.
It is Detroit, right? Detroit actually hasn't been great over the first 2 weeks against the run. Like, I don't want to, they haven't been as good as I thought they would be, but this is, when you're, a touchdown favorite at home, usually the correlation there is really good, and he's only 3,900, so it's like really cheap.
That means he only needs 10 points, but again, in week 1, 4 points, in week 2, 7 points. I don't know. I don't think he's safe at all. Davis, what do you think about Miles Sanders, Frank Gore, and DraftKings?
Yeah, I mean, that's why you're playing Nelson Aguilar in cash, right? It's because these cheap running backs suck. Like, they don't even project. they don't even project for like 10 PPR points. And you know that the people you're playing against in double ups and head-to-heads, you know for a fact that they are going to be attacking the players with much narrower ranges of outcomes, and the ranges of outcomes are much higher than Frank Gore. Whereas if you compared Nelson Aguilar, let's see, even if, let's say, you really don't like Nelson Aguilar, and let's say you're playing guys who just straight up, like, I would even say someone like Cole Beasley probably has a very similar range of outcomes but a much lower opportunity cost than Frank Gore.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. And actually, I wanted to mention another player. You didn't name my favorite cheap cash game play at running back. Now, granted, I'm not using this guy, but if you need to go cheap, I would prefer Carlos Hyde on DraftKings. In week 2, he had 20 carries. Yeah, he only went for 90 yards, didn't get the end zone. It was against Jacksonville. Week 1, he also played a top 5 running defense. He had 83 yards on 10 carries. He was getting acclimated to the offense. This week, he plays the Chargers, who don't tackle especially well. I think he's got a nice, safe floor, and he's a good price. I don't love him, but Davis, I'm curious if you like him more than Frank Gore.
No, so this is the reverse split, is we're going to see, so in games where Houston is favored, or in games where they spend much of the game ahead, those are going to be Carlos Hyde games. In road games where they're going to be much more pass heavy, those are going to be the Duke Johnson games. I would probably take the under on 35% of the snaps for Carlos Hyde, and would certainly take the under on like 12 touches. He has one target through 2 games.
So we all agree we're spending up. Tags, is there any other running back besides the guys we talked about, Zeke, McCaffrey, Cook, Eckler, that you would be happy to spend up on?
No, Marlon Mack was the one guy I was considering in the mid-range, but then he popped up. He's got a calf issue. They're limiting him in practice. That's an alarm for a cash game, and you don't do it, because he was a good price actually this week at 5,800. But I can't play him in cash knowing that he's hurt.
Is there anybody that could end up starting? Like, let's say that...
Yeah, Darwin Thompson would be the lock of all locks if Damian Williams and LaShawn McCoy both sat. And I would include that, even saying, Darrell Williams is still probably going to play about 50% of the snaps, but Darwin Thompson is much more likely to get the high value touches. So, he'll be in there on passing downs. He would likely be the guy they would use on those jet sweeps they love to use near the goal line. He will be like 90% owned in cash games if those guys miss.
For sure.
Yeah, that's absolutely perfect. That's what I was getting at, really. And then on FanDuel, we're looking at some cheaper plays. I don't love Matt Breida against Pittsburgh, but on FanDuel at 5,900, that's a really good price. He's the 26th most expensive running back, and he's projected for the 15th best performance on the slate. So I'm curious what you think about his matchup this weekend, Davis.
I think he's just okay. Again, I think that we are kind of in the realm of just trying to find guys who would maybe fit but are not what we'd call optimal.
I don't want to trust Shanahan in cash games. And then I was going to ask about Aaron Jones on FanDuel too. He's only $6,900.
Oh, no, you're not trusting a Packers running back in cash. Can't do it.
That's exactly what I'm saying, because I think a lot of people are going to use Aaron Jones. Our projected ownership percentage has him above 15%. He's one of only 5 guys in that range. I think he's a bad play though. In cash games.
Just too much risk in cash. You don't need it. No.
Yeah, lot of risk.
All right, guys, we're going to move on over to wide receiver here in just a moment. But first, I want to tell you about Pristine Auction. First of all, we're giving away a signed Julian Edelman Patriots helmet from pristineauction.com. If you want to enter for this giveaway and all future giveaways, if you enter now for this one, it's going to enter you for all of them the rest of the season. We're going to give away this Julian Edelman signed helmet to one lucky listener. All you have to do to sign up is go to fantasypros.com/contest. It takes about 30 seconds to enter. And if you haven't been to Pristine Auction before, you are missing out. There are so many good values. I mean, they're auctioning off hundreds, sometimes thousands or 10,000 items in a day. So you're certain to find some good values if you look hard enough. And no matter who your team is, favorite players, I'm sure you're going to be able to find something. And with Pristine Auction, everything is guaranteed authentic from only the most trusted sources. Check it out at pristineauction.com, Pristine auction.com. And when you sign up, make sure to enter the registration code FantasyPros, all one word. That's going to get you $5 off your first purchase. Okay, guys, let's go wide receiver. And we already talked about it. We're going to have to go cheap at wide receiver because we're all spending up at running back. Who are some of those cheap plays that you're fond of, Davis?
Well, the first one is obvious, and that's going to be Nelson Agholor. He came in the game last week and, pretty much immediately flashed his familiarity with Carson Wentz. 11 targets, 107 yards, and 1 touchdown, basically playing only half of that game. I do think there is a little bit of we could talk a little bit about J.J. Arcega-Whiteside because he's going to be playing the Alshon Jeffrey role. On FanDuel, who is cheaper between Arcega-Whiteside and Agholor? I'm assuming J-Jaw?
It's very close. Whiteside is 3,500 on DraftKings, and Aguilar's 3,600.
Yeah, on FanDuel, I'm not sure what that price difference is. I knew that Arcega-Whiteside was. I knew he was cheaper on DraftKings.
But again, it is on DraftKings. It's very easy. You're going to be playing one of Larry Fitzgerald or Christian Kirk, most likely, and Keenan Allen for 7,000 after having about 40% of the team's targets, 15 last week, 10 the first week. Just absolutely demolishing targets for the Chargers, and he is less expensive than Antonio Brown, less expensive than Julio Jones, Michael Thomas, Amari Cooper, Devontae Adams. He is really one of the best values probably that we're going to see all year. So the wide receiver position, pretty thin. Some guys who are borderline in play for cash, I think, would be DJ Moore and Randall Cobb as well.
I've got Keenan Allen as the number one wide receiver to get at my lineup against Houston. Tags, what can you tell us about this matchup?
Keenan Allen, he's going to be matching up with Bradley Roby, who, by the way, has been a perimeter corner throughout his career, and he hasn't been very good at it. Now moving into the slot, he's going to have some issues with Keenan Allen. The weird thing is I really don't understand it because Keenan Allen's better. He's a better route runner than 99% of the wide receivers in the league. But for whatever reason, his wide receiver rating when targeted has been lower in man coverage versus zone coverage. I don't know if that's a Rivers thing or I don't think it's a Keenan Allen thing, but whatever the case may be, if they're not getting a pass rush to Phillip Rivers as much as maybe they used to, Keenan Allen's going to eat. He's going to eat up that matchup. Like, seriously, it's not good. Aaron Colvin was supposed to be their starting slot cornerback, but they cut him after week 1. They just wanted to get out of the contract. They let him go. So they're forced to play Roby there, and that's an ugly situation. So Keenan Allen is definitely one of those guys in cash that I would consider. And I guess you could use Kirk Cousins' struggles as a reason to go up to Keenan Allen. But Adam Thielen is a phenomenal play too.
Can you trust him in cash games? Like, okay, I love the price, but how much are they actually going to throw the ball?
Well, I mean, it's more about LaMarcus Joyner, a converted. He's a safety playing nickel cornerback for them, and he's not ready for it. Over the first 2 weeks, he's allowed 14 of 15 passing for 119 yards in his coverage. Like, that's terrible. Not good at all. So Thielen should be the safety net for Kirk Cousins. And the reason that I like, we're going to get into this in the tournament segment a little bit too, is the reason I like Thielen so much is because I think Kirk Cousins is being undervalued this week. Against the Raiders, they're not getting pressure on the quarterback. And if they're not getting pressure on the quarterback, Kirk Cousins will eat them alive. The reason that Kirk Cousins sucked last week was because he was pressured, I think, 66% of the time. That was the highest in the league.
And he's bottom 5 against the pass rush in the NFL. When he's under pressure, he's a bad quarterback.
Yeah, I don't understand, but that's what I'm saying. So Oakland has actually stepped it up and played better against the run with Vontaze Burfict, but Cousins, like, that stack is actually a really good one. I actually like Adam Thielen an awful lot, and they've lowered his price to the point where it's like $6,700. You don't even need much out of him in hit value.
Yeah, that's a good call. I'm not using Adam Thielen just because I don't know if they're going to pass the ball like 15 times. I don't want to mess around with that. Keenan Allen is a great play. Obviously, Nelson Aguilar on DraftKings. On FanDuel, he's a little bit more expensive. He's $4,800. J-Jaw is $4,600, so not much of a difference there. You can use Aguilar on FanDuel, but the place that I really like on FanDuel, Larry Fitzgerald, $5,900. He's the 37th most expensive wide receiver.
Oh yeah, that's a lock.
Yeah, 37th most expensive, projected for 17th. And then what do you guys think about John Brown against Cincinnati, Marquis Brown at Kansas City? I'll start with you, Davis.
I mean, I don't think I would use him. Well, maybe I would use him in cash on FanDuel. He had 13 targets last week. He has over 30% of the team's market share of air yards. He looks like a guy who should have been drafted in the first round who's playing with an elite NFL quarterback. So I don't think I would tell you that you were wrong or bad for making that play.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to use him in cash games, but it's a good matchup against Kansas City. Obviously, it's going to be a high-scoring game, highest over-under on the slate at 52. Tags, would you use John Brown or Marquise Brown in cash games? And what do you think about Larry Fitzgerald this week?
I couldn't use John Brown. That game script can go south relatively quick against the Bengals. And knowing the Bengals it seems like more offensive linemen are falling down there. It's a team that I struggle, and they're not going to score many points against the Bills. There's some serious concern there. Marquise Brown is definitely in play. I was looking at this, like the starting cornerback duo for the Chiefs. Bashad Breeland, he runs a 4.62 40, and Charvarius Ward runs a 4.49 40. If Marquise Brown had run the 40, he was a guy that had a legitimate shot to break John Ross's record. I don't think he would have, but he's a 4.2, 4.3 guy. He can get behind that defense.
Well, he would have had to been healthy too. He was still dealing with the Lisfranc injury. So.
Right, and that's why he didn't run it. But so, like, Marquise Brown, like, that game has, I think it's a 55-point total, and we're talking about both quarterbacks as the number 1 and 2 options in that game. There's really no reason not to like Marquise Brown. I've moved him all the way up to, I think, the wide receiver 22 this week, And I feel like I still might be too low on him, which is crazy. He gives you a ceiling, and it seems like he's going to give you a floor, with that 13 targets, playing 50 snaps last week. In a game they're going to have to throw a bit more than they have, in the first 2 weeks.
That's what our projection model's saying as well, as Marquis Brown's a top 24 wide receiver this week, which is really interesting. And there's a ton of cash game plays that are viable this week at wide receiver, which makes me think, build out the rest of your team first, see how much money you have, and then just use 3 or 4 of these 12 guys. I mean, there's some names we haven't mentioned. You might have brought them up, Davis. I'm sorry if you did. Curtis Samuel against Arizona, 4,800 on DraftKings.
No, I'm actually a little bit lower than consensus, it seems, on Curtis Samuel because DJ Moore is the guy who makes a bad quarterback's life easier. He's big, he's always open, very good at the short crossing routes, really good setting up wide receiver screens. I think Curtis Samuel's a guy who requires a little bit more of a precise thrower to really unlock, and I think that explains why Moore has been so much more targeted by injured Cam Newton than by healthy Cam Newton last year. So Moore is the guy who I'm really on. Samuel a little bit less this week.
Samuel's a really good route runner. I think you're right that Moore is the number one there, but the difference is $1,100 on DraftKings. Tags, is that enough to sway you towards Samuel, or are you staying away from both these guys?
I wouldn't play them in cash. I think Samuel's a better option in tournaments. He'll be lower owned than Moore. Moore is like the target guy, but going back to the time where Kyle Allen played last year, Curtis Samuel was targeted quite a bit. I want to say, so over the final 2 weeks, he had 17 targets. Again, I haven't split the targets up to see how many Kyle Allen threw to him, but Allen hit him on a deep touchdown. It might be a better situation for Curtis Samuel, whereas Cam Newton couldn't hit the broadside of a barn throwing over 10 yards, where Allen coming in might be able to do that. Curtis Samuel should have had a massive game last week, and his ownership would be a lot higher had he been hit on some of those balls and not been underthrown, overthrown, whatever the case is. So I think Curtis Samuel is a fantastic play in tournaments. However, in cash, I don't think I'm going to trust Kyle Allen to get things done in cash this week, though. The expectation is that Cam won't play. They said if he didn't practice on Wednesday that he was highly unlikely to play, and he didn't practice. He's in a walking boot, so it doesn't seem like it.
Yeah, I think I'll stay away from both these wide receivers in cash games then. If you are spending up at wide receiver, and let me say, I think it's a bad idea. I think it's clear that Davis does and Tags does as well. But if you are, Julio Jones is the best player, right, Davis?
No, Amari is. Amari with no Gallup, just...
Don't you think Xavier Howard is going to be shadowing him?
Tags pays way more attention to that stuff than I do. I just kind of do the projections just based on volume and then team line efficiency, and Miami's efficiency against everyone's really bad.
That's fair. I mean,
Amari just kind of looks like a big smash in the projections this week.
Yeah, their implied score is 34 points. Those have to come somewhere. Tags, do you like Amari, Julio, or maybe another more expensive wide receiver the best?
Yeah, Julio would be my top play, just because Xavier Howard, the threat of him shadowing, and that's like a problem because Xavier Howard is by far and away their best corner. Eric Rowe is terrible. And they just let go of Minkah Fitzpatrick, so it's like up the middle, they're going to be able to be beat. That's why Randall Cobb is a phenomenal option. I would play Randall Cobb in cash at 4,600. I like him more than Aguilar this week, I think. Aguilar, I just want to touch on Aguilar for a second. I don't think he's a bad play. He's 3,600. Like, he can't burn you. He's going to get targeted, but the issue is that the Lions have somewhat turned things around against the pass this year, and we don't know if it was Justin Coleman walking in because they were rotating slot cornerbacks all last year. Like, there were 3 different ones they used, and they couldn't seem to stop, like, wide receivers in the slot. Justin Coleman came over from Seattle, a guy that I think allowed just 1 touchdown in his coverage last year, and he's done a phenomenal job to start the year. I don't think Aguilar is going to smash. Like, I don't think Aguilar is a tournament option. In cash at 36, that's fine. But Randall Cobb, I mean, he's seen 5 and 6 targets in games with Gallup on the field, in games that were also, they were blowouts. So I like Cobb at 4,600. I like Fitzgerald at 5,100. But one player I do want to mention that I think is cash viable, and I know people are like, no way. If you want to use him in a tournament, that's fine. But Mike Evans is a good play.
Really?
Yeah, super good play. Not probably optimal cash play, but he's like probably the best tournament play on the board this week.
He's going to be under-owned.
Dang, guys, he's cheap on both sides.
He's going to be under-owned. And, well, they're lowering him because people are panicking. And Godwin is still really good. And Godwin has another good matchup again. But if they want to get Mike Evans going, they need to do it now. And I was looking forward at the schedule, and it's going to be tough because he's going to face a lot of shutdown cornerbacks in the schedule. And if there's one week where he can get over that, it's this one. Because Janoris Jenkins, like, I don't even know if they're going to have him shadow Evans. But even if they do, like they did last year, he went for 6 catches, 120 yards, and a touchdown against Jenkins. So if they want to get him going, this is the week.
At that price, that's a great play. I mean, let's not forget in week 1, he was questionable with the flu. Have you guys ever tried to play sports with the flu? It is not easy. Week 2, he had James Bradbury covering him, and he still went for 61 yards on 8 targets. That's not bad at all. I think he's going to be fine against the Giants. I've still got him a top 10 wide receiver rest of the season. Now, Chris Godwin is up there as well, absolutely. But, I mean, there's a lot of wide receivers. Anybody else that you would say, if somebody played them, Davis, it's not a bad play. You just want to do it yourself?
I think it's a pretty thin pool at wide receiver this week. I think we pretty much covered all the guys that are, borderline defendable in cash game settings.
Anyone you want to add to the equation, Hardman for Kansas City, Tegs?
I wouldn't put him in cash, no. And the one player I will mention, I'm not going to play him in cash because I just can't bring myself to do it. If Sterling Shepard gets cleared, he would be someone I'd consider. I know Daniel Jones is a quarterback. Daniel Jones looked good in the preseason, and that should only help someone like Sterling Shepard because he was willing to take shots. He was actually moving the ball around the field. He wasn't targeting just one receiver. Like Eli Manning tends to lock onto players just far too much. But $4,900 for Shepard, a guy that should see 8+ targets, that's always appealing, but not seeing Daniel Jones in a regular season game yet, that's the reason that I can't do it. But I don't think he's a terrible play at $4,900.
Let's move on over to the tight end position. But first, football fans, it's week 3 of the NFL season, and if you've missed entering the SideBoss Pro Pick'em contest, no problem. Not too late to join this week and still be eligible to win prizes throughout the season. In addition to the NFL Pro Pick'em contest, SideBoss is currently running player prop contests for quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. No kickers. You're welcome, Jets fans. And don't miss playing the upcoming UFC Fight Night 59. Play any SideBoss weekly or daily free-to-play games, get all the picks correct, and boom, win cash and an entry into the SideBoss $150,000 private NFL Against the Spread contest. Go to contest.sideboss.com and use the promo code FantasyPros, all one word. That's contests.sideboss.com, promo code FantasyPros. Let's move on over to the tight end position, and it looks like you've got to pay up at tight end this week. There's 3 great guys. Would you agree with that, Davis?
I think there's 4 great guys because Philadelphia is missing so many guys. So we have Travis Kelsey, Zach Ertz, George Kittle, and Evan Ingram, all with plus value projections on dailyroto.com. And I think Kelsey is pretty clearly the best one, but I would not fault you for playing any of the 4.
I think Kelsey on DraftKings is a great play because his price is so much more reasonable. On FanDuel, he's so much more expensive than everyone else. I don't think that you should use him in cash games because there's only so much cash to go around. I like Kettle a little bit more on FanDuel, but Tags, would you agree Kelsey on DraftKings is the way to go?
Yeah, I like Kelsey, if you can afford him, but you probably can't. We talked about spending up for Zeke and CMC and or Cook or whatever the case may be. And your people are going to want to pay for Lamar Jackson or Mahomes. So it's like you start looking at this stuff and you're like, you have to save money somewhere, right? And I just can't find a way to spend 71 on Kelsey this week in cash. So he's not a bad play if you could find the money, but I actually think there's a few plays that are down below 5,000 that are actually decent. I like Mark Andrews at 4,600. That matchup against the Chiefs is a really good one. He's produced. I don't care that he's playing limited snaps. If he's getting targeted, I want him. Darren Waller, 4,100. I know it's against Minnesota, but the targets have to go somewhere, and Waller's been targeted. He's basically the Jared Cook of that offense, but he's a better football player. So 4,100 for him is not bad, but then going down even further, I like Greg Olsen and Austin Hooper, 36 and 3,700. Olsen, again, the safety valve over the middle of the field against that Arizona defense that has allowed the number 1 tight end on a week and then the number 2 tight end in another week. So Greg Olsen, 3,700 seems relatively safe. I mean, all you need is 7.5 points, 8 points out of him. That's ridiculously easy against Arizona. And then Austin Hooper against a zone defense so the Colts run more zone than anybody else in the league. And when tight ends, they basically sit down in a zone, they get targeted a lot more. Darius Leonard is one of their starting linebackers. He's in the concussion protocol. He might not be able to play in this game. He is really good. He's one of the better. But all this stuff adds up that Austin Hooper should get some targets, especially knowing that Devonta Freeman has struggled a little bit. So I just see them moving the sticks that way.
Well, it's Dirk Cutter's offense. So who knows if Freeman has actually struggled. It's just Dirk Cutter kills fantasy running backs.
I was on that this offseason, and then I totally moved off because I was like, oh, the offensive line's good, and the offense, and geez, Cutter just destroys run games, man.
By the way, Austin Hooper had 88 targets last year, and he started off fine with 15 targets in the first 2 weeks. Bad matchups against Minnesota and Philadelphia. I think he's a really good buy low right now in season-long leagues. I do like him for that price on DraftKings. And Davis, I want to ask you this. If we're trying to save money on DraftKings, maybe we can go up and get a Julio Jones. If we go with double tight ends. Now, I've talked about this before because the way that DraftKings prices their tight ends, like imagine if Greg Olsen was a wide receiver. Would you pay $3,700 for him against Arizona? I would in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why going double tight end is probably not, not particularly optimal is just that it's not that they don't have good projections. It's just that you need to be using that spot on a running back.
Okay, so you mentioned Christian McCaffrey, Ezekiel Elliott. Is there a third running back? Are you using Austin Eckler as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think Eckler's probably the first guy in most lineups. And then after that, I think you're kind of picking and choosing between Dalvin Cook, Christian McCaffrey, and Ezekiel Elliott.
So, guys, as I mentioned on FanDuel, Travis Kelsey's $8,000. George Kittle's $6,600. Zach Ertz $6,900. So if you're deciding between these two, because there's no really cheap tight end. Like Mark Andrews is $6,800 on FanDuel. Greg Olsen $6,100. So obviously, if you're not going Kelsey, you're spending on Ertz or Kittle. Which of these two would you prefer at very similar prices, Tags?
Ertz, 100%.
Okay.
I don't trust Garoppolo right now. He's not very good. I know we just watched like the Steelers allow 2 touchdowns to Will Dissly, but it does help that they added Minkah Fitzpatrick. He's one of the better cover safeties. So I don't know if they're going to use him to cover Ertz. I don't know, but I just don't trust Jimmy Garoppolo. I know he had a good game last week, but it was against the Bengals. And Zach Ertz, in a game without Alshon and a game without Deshaun, he's going to get targeted a crap ton. I think we could lock in Ertz for 10 targets in this game, and that's just unheard of.
Yeah, that would be really nice. All right, guys, let's go on over to quarterback. Are we spending up on Patrick Mahomes even against Baltimore, Davis?
I mean, I'd love to, but I don't think there's really any way to make it work this week unless we get Darwin Thompson. I think that would be the only way, is if we get, a $3,000 running back, or maybe maybe Josh Jacobs misses this game and we can play Jalen Richard. Maybe that is how we do it. We think we get 6 to 9 carries out of Jalen Richard and something like 5 to 8 targets. Maybe it would be possible then, but pretty clearly I think you're going to be sifting between the $5,000 and $6,000 quarterbacks on DraftKings.
Sure. So among those, who are your favorites, or who is your favorite?
Well, Kyler is my favorite for sure. He just has the best he really has the best volume in football right now. 40 passing attempts against Baltimore, only 8 rushing attempts for the team. 54 passing attempts against Detroit. They really haven't started rushing with him at all yet, and that's coming. The rushing is most definitely coming for Kyler.
He's already had his 2 most difficult matchups of the season. Detroit crushes running quarterbacks. Baltimore's obviously a very good defense. The rushing is going to come, and like you mentioned, 94 pass attempts. Guys, he has the second most passing yards in the first 2 games of his career in NFL history. And he's going to pile up all the rushing yards as well. Tags, I've got him locked into my cash games. In fact, I'm going to give you a sneak preview. He's my lock of the week at all positions.
Wow. I wouldn't go that far. Just because, so Kyler, yes, all the passing yards, I get it, but he's throwing the ball a lot. He's averaging 7 yards an attempt. That's not great. It's actually below average. His touchdown rate should spike a bit. It's at 2.1% right now, so we should expect some positive regression. But the issue is that looking at the Carolina defense, let's stay on Kyler Murray for a second, is that he hasn't run the ball because that's just the way the offense has been designed. I think that Vegas was onto something when they said his over-under for rushing yards at like 450 yards. It seems like the under is a good bet right now. But looking at the game script that they had in the first 2 weeks, that's why there was a whole lot of pass attempts. We didn't see like any rushing out of them last week. It kind of makes sense considering the matchup.
And that's who Arizona's going to be all season, though. It's going to be that game script all year long, unless they happen to play the Dolphins.
They don't want to be involved in shootouts every single week because Kyler's not winning the games. That's the thing, is they have to slow it down. Especially if they jump out to a lead, they need to slow the game down a little bit.
Good luck running against Luke Kuechly in Carolina, though.
Exactly. So he's going to have Luke Kuechly on him as a spy. Luke Kuechly is one of the better, guys that can shadow a quarterback.
Yeah, but there's a difference between shadowing a quarterback and shadowing Kyler Murray, who runs a 4.3.
There's one game last year where they allowed more than 27 yards rushing to a quarterback. So it's not like a game where a quarterback's just rushed against them. They obviously plan well against that. The reason that you could like Kyler, though, is because the weakness of Carolina is like the middle of the field. They're slot cornerback, and they don't have 2 of them that they could kind of match up with the 2 slot receivers that the Cardinals are trotting out there. So I don't think Murray's a bad play.
So you're going Josh Allen, aren't you?
I would rather play Josh Allen, yeah. I would. And that sounds weird.
I don't blame you. He's going to get 10, 15 carries against Cincinnati. Davis, what do you think about this? Is he in consideration for you for cash games?
Yeah, I think Josh Allen is a very similar play. He's only $100 more on DraftKings, adds a little bit of the rushing upside. The Buffalo team total has elevated to 25. Of course, the only concern you have about Josh Allen is his passing volume has been significantly worse, and they are a much better team than the Arizona Cardinals. So you're definitely running the risk of running into like a 28 passing attempt game. And I think Josh Allen is fine. I think the two are extremely comparable plays this week.
I've got Josh Allen as my number 2 quarterback if I had to choose someone besides Kyler Murray. Tags, who else is on your radar? I mean, we've got a lot of great plays. Lamar Jackson, granted he's expensive, but he gets Kansas City. Dak Prescott gets Miami. I guess you're not playing Jameis Winston. Nobody really is. He'll be a great GPP play, but he gets the Giants. Matt Ryan in the Dome against Indianapolis. You could go any number of ways here.
Yeah, I think Lamar Jackson is an awesome play. I mean, looking at this Chiefs team, they're a team that is going through a scheme change, and they're going to have difficulty covering Marquis Brown. As I mentioned, their cornerbacks just aren't fast enough, which requires keeping a safety back. Tyrann Mathieu is not very good in coverage. They're starting a rookie opposite him at safety. I just feel like the switch from a 3-4 to a 4-3 it's gone through some changes, and I know that Oakland struggled last week, but that's just what Oakland does. Like, Derek Carr is just so up and down, it's ridiculous. Don't think that Kansas City's defense is all of a sudden good, because they're not. This game does have a high over-under. Lamar Jackson just ran for 120 yards last week, and we haven't had Baltimore in a situation where they've kind of had to throw. You know, let's pretend that Patrick Mahomes jumps out to an early lead in this game. Yes, Lamar Jackson's going to drop back to pass, but you think that he's not going to rush at all? That's going to happen, and he can pass in this defense. So his floor is just massive. So if you can find a way to get him in your lineup, I mean, $7,000, it's up there. You have to save, $1,100 from Josh Allen, but if you can do it, and if you feel comfortable, I think Lamar Jackson's going to be worth it.
I think he's very close to being worth the extra $1,100. And granted, and yeah, he did have 16 rushes last week, but he only had 3 in week 1. Is there a chance we get that in week 3 against Kansas City, Davis?
It certainly is possible. I mean, I think Mahomes and Lamar are the two best quarterback plays of the week. I just don't see any way for them to enter into a cash game conversation. The math just doesn't work.
Oh, by the way, real quick, Lamar Jackson did play against the Chiefs last year when he didn't throw the ball a whole lot. In that game, he threw the ball 24 times, 147 yards, 2 touchdowns, and rushed for another 71 yards.
Yeah, and I think he's got considerably better. He has much better players around him. Mark Andrews looks like a stud. Marquise Brown looks like an absolute beast. So, yeah, I think this is a very good quarterback week. There's a lot of options here. Let's go to DST before we circle back around and go GPP. I just want to save money. Like, there's so many decent options that the tiebreaker for me is, how do I save a couple bucks? What do you think, Tegs?
Yep, I'm playing the Steelers. At 2,300, I don't trust Jimmy Garoppolo, as I've mentioned, and I don't know if many people, like, this is like going unnoticed for whatever reason, is that Joe Staley, his starting left tackle, is out. He's not playing.
Oh, good call.
So, like, that's going to hurt. Like, Pittsburgh, their defense is not as bad as they've looked. They've had some bad communication in the secondary, and losing Sean Davis might actually be a good thing. They added Minka, but that front seven is their strength, and I do anticipate them getting to Jimmy Garoppolo in this game, and if he gets hit a couple times, it's like, it's going to rattle him. I don't know why. This is another game where, last week I said I had no idea why Baltimore was like jumped out to like a 14-point favorite. That didn't make sense to me. It's kind of like this week with the 49ers. How the hell are they close to a touchdown favorite against the Steelers? It doesn't make sense to me. I think this game should be closer to, I could see San Francisco at home. I think they should be favored maybe by 2.5, 3 points, but
This is like, oh man, it's just the Mason Rudolph hate all over the place. He's an upgrade over Big Ben, guys.
Compared to how Big Ben looked, yeah, but I'm not willing to go there, but I'm willing to say that the 49ers are not as good a team as people think they are.
Holy cow. Our producer Clinton is going to kill you for saying that, by the way.
It's all good. It's all good.
So Davis, last week the Patriots, it was you have the Patriots and you cashed, or you don't have the Patriots and you lost.
Yeah, very, very tough there.
Our ownership model at least says a lot of people, again, are going to be on the Patriots against the New York Jets. A lot of people are going to be on the Dallas Cowboys against Miami, even though they're so expensive. Are you doing that in cash games, or are you going down and saving like Tegs and I?
Right now I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers playing at home against Danny Dimes. They've scored 9 and 12 fantasy points, 4 sacks in 2 games, got the defensive touchdown against Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't think they're like a great defense or anything like that, but I do think that they are fine enough to pressure Daniel Jones.
If you would have said this during the preseason, I would have laughed so hard that you were picking the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in a cash game. But I'll tell you what, Tags, we talked about it yesterday. Todd Bowles has made them look like a very good defensive unit. That's a good call. There's a lot of good calls at DST this week.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to the salary that you have available to you. Because if you could pay $3,800 for the Patriots, do it. I like the Packers at 34. I like the Vikings at 33. But again, I'm saving money, dude. I'm going down Pittsburgh 2,300.
You know, I don't love Seattle's price on DraftKings, but on FanDuel, that's who I'm using in cash games. They're only 3,400. That's the 22nd most expensive defense. We're projecting them for 8th. In fact, I have them a little bit higher. I've got them in my top 5 against Teddy Bridgewater because Teddy Bridgewater just looked awful. And Tags, you talked about it. The offensive line has been so good because Drew Brees, you can't blitz him. But they could blitz Teddy Bridgewater, and he looked awful under pressure. So I'm going with the Seattle Seahawks defense for a reasonable price on FanDuel this week.
Well, Sean Payton kind of said that Taysom Hill might be the number 2 quarterback, that nobody really knows that. And I stand by the fact that I said on the podcast a couple days ago that we could see Taysom Hill and that Teddy could be on a very, very, very short leash, and he might already be strangling.
So what you're saying is Taysom Hill in GPP.
I'm not going to go that far, but if you play in a 2-quarterback league, I would definitely say he's worth an ad right now.
All right, guys, let's talk some GPP. But before we do, I want to talk a little bit about FanDuel. All right, guys, let's circle back around and go GPP. I'm using the Kansas City Chiefs against Lamar Jackson. We haven't seen Lamar Jackson have to pass with the defense sitting back, expecting him in nickel dime coverages. I think Lamar Jackson could be in for a 2-3 interception week, even against this, kind of shoddy Kansas City defense. Kansas City didn't have a great defense last year, but they finished top 10 in fantasy. It's not about how many points you give up. It's about how many sacks and turnovers you cause and getting that pick 6. I think it could happen for Kansas City this week, and they're going to be low owned. Who do you have, Davis?
So I think, again, the Buccaneers are going to be one of the cheaper options that I look to. I kind of disagree with you guys on this Mason Rudolph as an upgrade over Big Ben thing. So I also like the San Francisco 49ers defense at home.
Okay, Tags, who do you have for GPP DST?
That's where I would go with either the Patriots or the Cowboys. And I know it sounds like, wait a minute.
No, because then you can get weird with cheap guys. And
it's very likely one of these two is going to end up as the top defense this week. I mean, they're projected for 2.5 standard deviations above the number 3 DST.
Yeah, and it just forces different lineup construction, and that's why I would be open to doing that in tournaments.
All right, we'll keep on going here in just a moment, but first I want to tell you about FanDuel. This fantasy football season, there are now more ways to win than ever because FanDuel has more ways to win cash prizes and once-in-a-lifetime experiences during every single game, every single week. If you've never played FanDuel Fantasy Football before, great, because new users get $20 in site credit if they deposit $20. Pretty much everybody that I've talked to loves playing DFS over season-long leagues. Like, season-long leagues are great and everything, but it's just so fun to build your own team every single week. That's the best part about fantasy football. And you can build it however you want. You can be super flexible with 2 tight ends, however you want to do it. I think the best part about playing DFS is that injuries and busts or holdouts like Le'Veon Bell last year can't kill your entire season. So what if you lose one week, bounce back the next week, get an entirely different roster, and you have a chance to win millions of dollars? You can sign up for FanDuel now and get $20 in total bonus. Just make your first deposit to get started, and you'll get an extra $5 in site credit every week for 4 weeks. Go to FanDuel.com/FantasyPros or download the FanDuel app. And by the way, I just want to remind you that we have a special offer going on right now for 6 months of our Hall of Fame package. Remember when I talked about the optimizer earlier that requires the Hall of Fame package? You can get 6 months of that, a $65 value. And all you need to do to claim the offer is go to FantasyPros.com/offers, make a $10 deposit as a brand new FanDuel user, and you'll have access to all our premium content and tools like our DFS optimizer. That's FantasyPros.com/offers. What about tight end? Who do you guys like for GPP? Are we just sticking with the guys who are going to get a bunch of targets? Or could we see someone like Vance McDonald get in the end zone twice again?
I like Tyler Eifert a little bit. He basically has just replaced AJ Green as the red zone guy for Cincinnati. I think he's got a pretty low ceiling, but I think, he probably would max out at 15 to 18 DraftKings points. But when you compare him in salary to, who so many of the guys in the pool are going to be using, I think he's decent. Also, OJ Howard coming off of the 0 target game against Carolina. If we're just buying in to this Buccaneers passing game in general, I think that you need to create some stacks where you're the rule that I will probably use in the Daily Roto Optimizer is I will key in OJ Howard and make it so that when I have a Jameis Winston lineup, it'll be a minimum of 2 OJ Howard, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, O.J. Howard was definitely one of my favorite tournament plays. At 3,800, you're not going to find him cheaper than that. And his ownership, we have projected at under 1%, which is kind of crazy. He's a guy that legitimately, even if he catches 2 balls, one can go 80 yards to the house. And that's basically what you're looking for in a tournament, knowing that ownership is so low and that you're saving so much money. A fantastic option, O.J. Howard. And I think the other one I would mention is Kyle Rudolph. I don't like Kyle Rudolph. I wouldn't draft him. I didn't draft him last year. I wouldn't have drafted him this year. But looking for like ways for Kirk Cousins to get back on track and finding those matchups. So Jonathan Abram, one of the starting safeties for the Raiders, the one they drafted this year in order to help take care of some of that role. He got hurt, out for the year. It's forcing them to play Curtis Riley in his place. He was targeted on 3 pass attempts last week, 50 yards and a touchdown on those. Last year, the Raiders allowed ridiculous 10.3 yards per target to tight ends. This year, they're already allowing 9.7. Now, granted, they played Travis Kelsey last week, but this is a good matchup. And again, if for whatever reason they want to get Kirk Cousins going at home and, Dalvin Cook slows down a little bit, it's a good pivot off Dalvin Cook to take some of the passing game from the Vikings.
Tags, you're feeling it, man. Did you eat your Wheaties this morning?
Always, man. I don't eat anything in the morning. I don't eat until 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you're absolutely starving right now. My favorite GPP play for tight ends is TJ Hockenson, because everyone's looking at this matchup against Philadelphia and they're thinking it's a bad matchup. TJ Hockenson was, didn't do much last week, but I think it just comes down to it's TJ Hockenson. He's one of these tight ends who can break a big catch for a touchdown. And if he gets in the end zone with a 60-yard touchdown, he's way past value at 3,500 on DraftKings. So even against Philadelphia, I don't think anyone's going to use TJ Hockenson. I'd be glad to have him in my lineup.
I'd rather have O.J. Howard. He's basically the same price like Hockenson. So just the quick stat that I have on the Eagles defense is that ever since Doug Peterson has come there, that team has been ridiculous. Legitimately, over the last 50 regular season games under Doug Peterson, they've allowed 10 tight end touchdowns.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that is really good.
Yeah, they've been really good.
At the same time, TJ Hockenson just broke the math with rookie tight ends, right? We were off of him because
it was Arizona though, so we don't.
Yeah, okay, sure, that's true, but he just looks so good, man.
I've conceded to the fact that TJ Hawkinson's going to have some big weeks. I just don't think this is one of them.
And don't hear me wrong, I think O.J. Howard is significantly better than TJ Hockenson, especially with the difference in matchups, and the price is only $300. I just think he's going to be a lot more popular in GPP, and that nobody's going to use Hockenson, and he could go off. Guys, let's go quarterback for GPP. There's a lot of options here. I'll let you go first, Davis.
So there is a lot of options, but I think the best way to think about using quarterbacks is thinking about how you want to distribute your stacks and how you want to distribute your game stacks, because the research basically says that kind of the best way to create leverage in your lineups is not only to create stacks with your quarterback, but to also bring them back with guys from the opposing side of the game. So that makes someone like Dak Prescott a little bit less attractive to me because I'm not really interested in using any of the Miami Dolphins pass catchers, whereas on the other hand, it kind of makes me like, Jimmy Garoppolo plus George Kittle, and then bring it back with Juju Smith-Schuster. Kind of makes me like Kyler Murray because you can bring it back with DJ Moore. Makes me like Phillip Rivers, who you can stack with Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler, knowing that Eckler is a pass catcher, and then bring that back with DeAndre Hopkins or Will Fuller.
Tex, who do you like for GPP quarterback?
Tom Brady. It goes against what Davis just said, but the reason I like Brady so much is because this team is going back to the FU days where legitimately they are saying
Tom Brady's passing the ball when they're up 30 points and 2 minutes left.
We're going to put our foot on your throat and we're going to just basically kill you. And they're doing.
And it's the Jets. If they want to kill any team, it's the Jets.
Yeah. We don't know if Quinnen Williams and CJ Mosley will be back this week, but either way, that secondary, the Browns did a terrible job of taking advantage of an awesome matchup. They basically are taking too long for their plays to develop. The Patriots don't do that. They're going to do some quick hitting stuff to clear up some space. I think Josh Gordon is a good play. People are going to want to play Antonio Brown because the cornerback matchups here are great. Jermaine Johnson was benched last week. He was their best cornerback that they paid a lot of money to. He was benched last week. Jamal Adams is getting fined. He's saying, the NFL is BS. He might get suspended. I don't know what they're doing with this team, but they're not very good.
He's right, by the way. That was a clean hit.
Yeah, it was, but he saw Baker throw the ball. So I could see both sides. But either way, the reason that Brady's a good option is because no one's going to own him because they're going to pay up for Lamar Jackson or Mahomes if they get up to that level. He's a good one, and this is where I'm going to live and die by this. I'm going to say that Jameis Winston is a phenomenal play at 54.
He's my favorite GPP play for quarterback. he could have a huge week. Like, we like Mike Evans. We love Chris Godwin. O.J. Howard we're talking about in GPP. So, of course, Jameis is an option. I also want to mention Daniel Jones, who knows if he's going to explode against Tampa, and then Mason Rudolph, who I'm very fond of. I know San Francisco's defense been a lot better, but they've got some good weapons there with Juju. Vance McDonald, he loves. I just think this might be too good of a price to pass up on some exposure to him on DraftKings. What is he? $4,800, guys. I could see a scenario where he, gets 5x value.
Yeah. Davis, what's your take on Jameis Winston?
I mean, he's fine. He's fine. Like, we've seen stretches of this stuff from Jameis Winston before, where he has the horrible turnover game, and then in the next game, the coach comes out and says, okay, we got to wipe that off. We got to get you out of that mentality. We got to get the people, like the fans off your back, the press off your back, and they just have these super conservative game plans, and they didn't need him, right? If that game against Carolina had gotten competitive, they would have taken the reins off, and Jameis would have been, throwing and he still made some excellent challenge throws towards Mike Evans. So I'm not really worried about Jameis and the Buccaneers offense at all.
I love that. I love the way you put that. Guys, let's go running back for GPP. I've talked about this before. I don't like to get cute in GPP for running back just because the best plays are the best plays and they're not as volatile. What do you think, Davis?
Yeah, probably really the same guys I just talked about earlier, and then I probably would add David Johnson in that player pool as well. I think that he is definitely going to get overlooked, and then Matt Breida as the home favorite against Pittsburgh. I think he will definitely top his 12 touches and 1 target from last week. I think he is a phenomenal play, especially on DraftKings, where I think he might be 5% owned.
Tags, who do you have?
A couple players I mentioned, talking about that Patriots game, they're going to score points. So you need to find that in a tournament somewhere. So Sony Michel and or James White, one of those guys. And Sony Michel fumbled towards the end of last week. That could lead to more touches for other players, which concerns me a little bit. That's why I wouldn't play Sony in cash, obviously. But James White could be a really good option at 5,100 in a tournament. But one other player I will mention is Devonta Freeman. I've already talked about Darius Leonard potentially being out for the Colts. And Devonta Freeman, he still does play for a high-scoring offense. I know he hasn't scored a touchdown. I know everybody's down on him, and that's the reason that he's going to have under 2% ownership. But Devonta Freeman at 4,900 is very appealing.
What do you think about Tony Pollard against Miami? We've seen Miami give up some huge performances to running backs, and the game's going to be out of hand. I mean, it's a 22-point spread.
Is he the dead min on FanDuel?
He is 5,000 on FanDuel. The dead min is 4,500.
Okay, so I don't think I would do it on DraftKings because I think there are legitimately guys who are better than him, like at wide receiver who are priced there. But on FanDuel, I could see it.
Could you see him having a Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson type of week here?
Yeah, exactly. That's basically exactly it.
There's one other running back that I'm really interested in here. It's Mark Ingram. I don't love him on FanDuel. He's way too expensive. But again, if this game has a 52, Davis, I think you said it jumped up to 54 over-under. Mark Ingram's going to be used in the passing game against Kansas City if they get behind. I could see him having a big week. I want some exposure to Baltimore.
Yeah, I don't hate it at all. Had the 2 touchdowns in week 1. I certainly think that is, I have no problems with that at all.
So last week, I said I was only going to talk about one guy, but last week we said, we don't want anything to do with Le'Veon Bell. He's going up against Cleveland, bad game script. Even with the bad game script, he put up 21 points. Week 1, bad game script against Buffalo, he put up 23 points. Is there a chance that he just does it against New England? I mean, they're going to have to pass the ball, and it looks like Le'Veon Bell might be their number 1 wide receiver, and he's going to get 15, 20 carries. Would there be any sense in using him in GPP tags?
Honestly, no. He makes more sense in cash than he does in tournaments, to be honest with you. And I say that just because he has a touch floor. The issue is that I don't see them scoring many points. And if you're going to win a tournament, you need a couple touchdowns out of a running back that's costing you $7K. And that's just something I can't see with Le'Veon Bell against the Patriots. The Patriots have legitimately shut down run games. They've allowed 25 yards in each of their first 2 games. Again, I mean, I know last week was against the Dolphins, but week 1, James Conner, 21 yards on 10 carries. Like, that team is, legit. And, again, Le'Veon Bell's going to get his touches. He's probably going to score 15 to 20 PPR points, but that's not going to win you a tournament.
All right, guys, let's go wide receiver GPP. I'll start us off here so you guys have some time to think about your answers. I'm going Juju Smith-Schuster. I already talked about Mason Rudolph. If I'm going Mason Rudolph, I'm stacking him with Juju and probably Vance McDonald at San Francisco. He's fairly expensive, so nobody's going to be on him. His ownership's going to be down there around 1-2%. If I can get some exposure and he goes off for 160 and 2 touchdowns, I'm going to be one of the only guys on him.
Yeah, love Smith-Schuster. Actually, this is probably going to be one of the cheapest we get him all year, unless it turns out that Mason Rudolph just can't play at all. That really would be the only scenario. And then we already talked about it, but Mike Evans, 6,600 on DraftKings, just one of the easiest tournament plays you'll ever make.
That's amazing. That is such a good price. I think I'm going to have to use him even in cash, guys.
Tyler, yeah, he's a good play. Tyler Lockett at 6,200 is a phenomenal tournament play. He's someone that I wish I could use in cash, honestly, against that Saints defense with PJ Williams in the slot. That's just too good of a matchup to pass up. DK is going to be dealing with Marshawn Lattimore. Marquis Brown, phenomenal wide receiver play. Like, the upside is endless with him in that game. And then one of my favorite guys, if you're looking for someone that's cheap, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I mentioned him on the Start Sit show yesterday, and there's a reason that I like him so much. He's only 4,300. His ownership is going to be buried after last week. People are looking at Geronimo Allison now, and he's not the guy to look at. What happens is the Broncos have changed, and they're using Chris Harris Jr. in a shadow role now. They did it with Allen Robinson last week, so therefore you're going to see him match up with Devontae Adams this week, which means Isaac Yiadom, their number 2 cornerback, is going to be defending Marquez Valdez-Scantling. He has been destroyed in coverage, and we saw it in week 1. We saw Tyrell Williams go off against that team. A lot of it came in his coverage. So, you have the athlete that MVS is. If Aaron Rodgers is fine, healthy, whatever, he's on the field as the number 2 receiver. Allison is only playing about half the snaps. So I'm going to go with MVS in this matchup. I think that he's a phenomenal tournament play.
I'm fond of Sterling Shepard that you mentioned earlier. I was going to bring up Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Another name that I love, we like Matthew Stafford this week against Philadelphia, right? They're not going to be able to run the ball. It's going to be a great game script for passing. And Marvin Jones has put up some big games in the past. He's really cheap on Fanduel at 5,400. Davis, what do you think about Jones? And do you have a couple other names for us?
I think Jones is. I think he's a fine play. We haven't talked about Sammy Watkins or Demarcus Robinson or McCole Hardman at all. Obviously, I think all of those guys are phenomenal tournament plays. I think Devin Smith for the Dallas Cowboys filling in the Michael Gallup role, he's definitely going to be someone that I am using, just kind of throughout. And then Christian Kirk, if people are going to be super heavy on Larry Fitzgerald, I will kind of go the other way with Christian Kirk and Demir Byrd as Stack Filler sees the dead minimum on DraftKings. And then, of course, my boy every week, Will Fuller, 4,900 on DraftKings playing against the Chargers. Him and Mike Williams, I actually think are both great tournament plays.
Yeah, Mike Williams is a great name. There's so many wide receivers this week that I like. Tags, do you have a few other names before we go stack of the week and lock of the week?
We hit on most of them. Josh Gordon is a guy that is going to be under-owned, 5,400. But, I mean, after Antonio Brown last week, I understand why people are going to throw shade at Josh Gordon. But this matchup against the Jets, I mean, it could very easily be a 5-catch, 120-yard, 2-touchdown game for Josh Gordon. Like, that secondary is terrible. And he's going to be as low-owned as you'll probably ever see him.
That's a good call, too, man. All right, stack of the week. I'm going to start us off for GPP. I really like Jameis Winston, O.J. Howard, Mike Evans. I think that stack could absolutely eat. Why don't you give us one, Tags?
Oh, you just stole mine.
Sorry. I can take another one if you want.
That's where I was legitimately going to go. No, I'll just go with Lamar Jackson and Marquise Brown, and if you want to go a third one, Mark Andrews. Like that game, you just attack the games that have those high over-unders, and knowing that both quarterbacks are walking in, playing against defenses that are struggling a little bit. And Mahomes, even though it's against Baltimore, that team is missing 2 of their top 2 corners from they should have been at the start of the season. Jimmy Smith is out. Tavon Young is out. So they could struggle a little bit against Mahomes, who just kind of destroys everybody. So this is one of those game scripts where you're going to see Baltimore throw the ball a bit more.
And just because it's GPP doesn't mean you have to be contrarian all of your lineup. Go ahead and use these popular stacks and then mix in somebody who's going to be really low owned, 1 or 2 of those guys. That's how you win $1 million. Who do you have, Davis?
It's gotta be, just the Baltimore Kansas City game. So using Lamar Jackson with Marquise Brown and using Patrick Mahomes with Sammy Watkins, Travis Kelsey, Demarcus Robinson, and McCole Hardman, and trying to get all of those elements together into one lineup and mixing and matching at running back, tight end, flex, and defense to kind of make those pieces work.
All right, guys, let's go lock of the week. Tags, you first.
Ezekiel Elliott. He's going to be in every lineup. I'm more than willing to pay that price. Like his price could be like 9,800, and I'd still probably play him.
All right, Davis, how about you?
It's got to be Austin Eckler.
Okay, Austin Eckler. You know what? I said Kyler Murray earlier, but I can imagine a lineup without Kyler Murray. I can't imagine a lineup without Christian McCaffrey. I am definitely using him this week. I'm also definitely using Ezekiel Elliott, so same kind of thing. Guys, that's all for today's show. Davis, as always, it was a pleasure. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. Always love to come on.
All right, and I want to say thanks to the sponsors of today's show, Pristine Auction, and make sure to enter that registration code FantasyPros for $5 off at PRISTINE auction.com. And don't forget to sign up for that signed Julian Edelman helmet giveaway at FantasyPros.com/contest. And thanks also to Sideboss. You're going to want to get into their Pro Pick'em contest. And when you go to contest.sideboss.com, use the promo code FantasyPros. And also Fanduel. If you haven't ever tried Fanduel before, you've got to give it a try. I'm telling you guys, DFS is the best. Injuries and busts don't ruin your season. Pick a new team every week, and they're going to give you $20 in total bonus if you deposit $20 at fanduel.com/fantasypros. And by the way, don't forget to check out our lineup optimizer at fantasypros.com/optimizer. And if you're not already a Hall of Fame member to take advantage of that, just go to fantasypros.com/offers. You're going to get 6 months of our Hall of Fame package, a $65 value, and all you need to do to claim that offer, make a $10 deposit as a brand new user to FanDuel. Again, that's fantasypros.com/offers. For Davis Mattek and Mike Tagliere, I'm Bobby Sylvester. Thanks for listening, and enjoy your football.